For context, I work as a store manager for one of the largest retailers in the US, and part of my job is to screen and interview all the new workers we hire. Anyway, about a month ago, this 18-year-old guy walked in asking about a job opening. Normally, I would set up a formal interview on a later date, but we actually need a team member to help out one of our staff leaders, so I decided to interview him that day itself. I'll call him Jake for the sake of the story. Within 2 minutes of the interview, I realized that there was no way that we would be hiring him in any capacity. He literally walked into my office, put his feet up on my desk, and asked me when he should start. I'll be honest, I was shocked, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. I told him to remove his feet from my desk and asked him why he wanted to work for our company. He actually told me that the only reason he was applying was because he had lied on his college application, saying that he had experience working for our company. He needed to get a job with us because the college had asked for a certificate and letter of recommendation from our branch as proof of employment. I couldn't believe that he would admit to lying on his application that easily. I don't know why he thought that I would lie and give him a certificate saying that he worked with us for a year when he hadn't. I was actually very surprised at how he thought what he was doing was okay. Plus, at this point, I was angry at his entitled behavior, so I told him that there was no way he would ever be hired at our branch or any other branch of our company in the city because I was going to write to them and warn them about him. I told him that I would make sure that all the branches in our city knew that they shouldn't even bother giving him an interview because he didn't deserve one. Obviously, he wasn't expecting me to say no because he started crying, saying that I was ruining his whole future by being so stuck up. I told him to just remove the fake job from his application because there was no way that he would be able to get proof that they needed. Jake was in proper hysterics at this point and was refusing to leave until I wrote him a letter of recommendation. So I called security and had them drag him out of my store. I was going to put the whole situation out of my mind, but the next day, Jake came back with his mother in tow. I was in my office when one of the staff members called me outside because a woman was screaming for the woman who made her son cry. I went to see what was going on, and Jake was standing next to an older blonde woman who was yelling that I had mistreated her son. She was making a huge scene, and other shoppers had also gathered to see. When Jake saw me, he pointed me out to the woman, and she started shouting even more loudly. She started yelling, "How dare you treat my son like this? You made him cry. I'm going to make sure you lose your job for this." I was trying to calm her down, but she kept screaming to see my manager. So I also had to yell that I was the manager and that we should go to my office to sort this out. But she refused to move. She still wanted to see the man in charge. She told me that she wanted me to call my boss and tell him what had happened so that he would fire me and hire her son in my place. I was so shocked by her arrogance that I actually laughed. She even got more mad that I laughed and started screaming even louder, so I told her to come by my office so that I could call my boss. I really just wanted to get her away from the huge crowd that had gathered, because people had started recording the whole thing on their phones. So, in my office, I called the company's regional manager and put the call on speaker. When my boss picked up, I started telling him what had happened, but before I could finish, Jake's mother started shouting that I had abused her son and made him cry. She was demanding that I be fired and that her son should be hired in my place. I decided to take the phone off speaker and explain to my boss what had happened. Once I had told him that her son had lied, Jake's mother started screaming that her son would never lie and that I was the one who was lying. She started smirking, thinking my boss would believe her, but he understood what had happened and he told her that they had to leave the store because I was not going to be fired. She was very angry that my boss was on my side and started saying that I was going to pay for ruining her son's life. She was saying that he had gotten into the Pennsylvania State University and that she wasn't going to let me spoil his chance of being accepted. I had enough of her nonsense, so I had to call security again to get them out of the store. She made a huge scene while being escorted out, and we ended up having to give everyone who was shopping at that time a discount to apologize for the inconvenience. I was going to put the whole thing behind me, but one of the staff members showed me that Jake's mother had posted the whole story on our city's Facebook page and called me out by name. She had lied about everything. She had written that I had rejected her son because I knew he would take over my job. She wrote that I was threatened by her son because I knew that my boss would rather have a man in charge instead of a woman. She had made up a whole fake story and was telling people to boycott our store until I was fired and her son was hired in my place. What was even worse was that people in the comments were actually siding with them and saying that I deserved to lose my job. I was so pissed off at how they were trying to ruin my career that I decided to get my revenge. I called my boss and told him my plan, and once he gave me the go-ahead, I called my friend who is a lawyer to help me. I decided to go to small claims court and sue both of them for slander and libel. Since Jake and his mother had decided to name me in their Facebook post, I could prove that they meant to defame me with their lies. On the day of our hearing, Jake and his mother told the judge the same lies about me rejecting Jake's application because I knew her smart boy would take over my position. She told a whole sob story about how I'm suing them to scare them into staying silent. She kept on peddling her lies and saying that I had no proof of slander until the judge asked to hear from me. Jake's mother thought I had no proof, but what she didn't know was that our store had security cameras in every lane and that all of our interviews had to be recorded for the company's protection. The look on their faces when I asked the judge to lay all the security tapes that I had collected was hilarious. When the tape of her son admitting that he lied on his application played, she started shouting that I made up fake footage, but the judge had the tape checked and it hadn't been tampered with. The footage made it perfectly clear that they had made up everything in their post just to ruin my career. After seeing the footage of the interview and the scene Jake's mother made in my store, the judge declared that I won the case and that Jake and his mother had to take down their post and post a retraction and apology in its place, saying that they had lied. He also told them that their behavior was unacceptable. It felt so good to see them looking upset at their loss. But I wasn't done. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew what they had done. I went on our city's Facebook page and posted the same footage as proof that they had lied to everyone. Lots of people had believed their lies, so my post started getting a lot of attention. On watching the videos, many people who were in the store that day remembered all this happening. Everyone who had taken videos of the fight on their phones also started posting them. It proved even more that I was telling the truth. Everyone started calling out Jake and his mother for lying and trying to ruin my business. Even the lame apology they posted had people not believing them, especially because Jake's mother kept commenting that I must have bribed the judge because her son would never lie. She refused to accept that both her and Jake had made a mistake. She kept writing that once Jake got accepted into Pennsylvania State University, we would all see that I had made a big mistake by lying about her son. When I read that, I decided to make sure that the university knew exactly what kind of student they would be accepting if they chose to accept Jake. I wrote an email to the admissions office at Pennsylvania State University with my Facebook posts attached informing them about how Jake had lied on his application. A couple days later, I got an email back from them thanking me for telling them what had happened. They had looked into his application and called his school to see if everything else was true. It turned out that he had lied about being on the school's basketball team as well. He had also lied about being a member of the debate club. I guess the university had also written to Jake to inform him that his application had been rejected because of his lies. Because his mother made another Facebook post saying that I had ruined her son's life and that I will rot in hell for that. It was so funny seeing everyone replying to her saying that it was her own fault for raising her son to think that it was okay to lie on his application. She actually thought she would get sympathy for her son. It's still hard to believe Jake and his mother's audacity and arrogance, but I'm so glad that I managed to get my revenge and put them in their place. To start, this woman is great as a person. As a coworker, she is the worst. Let's call her Regina. When I started at this place a year ago, Regina was to train me on an aspect of our job. I had to ask her to slow down and repeat herself several times because nothing made sense. Keep in mind, I have worked in this industry for 8 years longer than her. My boss was able to explain it clearly in 5 minutes, and I've never had an issue. Shortly after starting, I noticed Regina would CC our boss on every email she sent to me. Regina would email me several times a day calling me out for problems she noticed, always CCing our boss. But I was always in the right, and my boss would back me up. I emailed Regina, only Regina, and said I felt like she was trying to get me in trouble. I felt disrespected, and I was wondering what I could do to improve. She replied, CCing our boss, telling me that if I felt that way, it was my own doing. Got it. My entire team works from home, so our boss has put people in charge of certain things so one person has control. One of my tasks is issuing documents for signature via the very popular system we all know. Basically, my team sends me an email that says, send these documents to X, Y, and Z, and I get to it. Good news. Regina only copies our boss on super important documents, which I understand. The other day, Regina sent me a request, and I failed to copy her when it was issued. Fixed in under a minute and did not cause any issue, but she still made a big deal about it over email and in our team meeting. Next request I get from her is, be sure to double check your work and all people are copied as detailed below. This pissed me off. The funny thing was, she didn't attach the documents I needed to send, nor tell me where the docs were located for me to get them myself. I reply asking for the docs, and she sends them stating, these are the final approved versions. Except they are wrong. First, we send PDFs, not Word docs. She sent me Word docs. Second, the formatting was atrocious. Signature blocks cover 4 pages when they should be on 1. The vendor name and address were put into different tables, so it made no sense. So, I sent it as is. Of course, my boss is copied on this and actually has to sign this doc, and she is not happy with the state of this document. I replied to my boss with the email from Regina saying this doc was approved by our boss, and with my other projects, I didn't CC like I normally do, which is not expected of me, but I do normally to prevent issues down the road. Boss replies to Regina and CCs me laying into her that he is not to fix her mistakes as he has his own job to do. This was also reiterated in our next team meeting, and I could see how angry my boss was. She said I had a one-on-one, and she said she was not upset with me. The next request I got from Regina was incredibly detailed and had everything I needed in the right format. ETA, lots of comments about Regina not being a good person. I suppose you all are correct. The times I have seen her outside of work, she had been pleasant, which is why I wrote what I did. Also, my boss is very aware of the situation with Regina and I, and has taken steps to ensure our work doesn't overlap much, sometimes unavoidable. Boss has her own issues with Regina. I'm not privy to details, but the boss had made a few comments about how Regina is, and that she'll never change. A few companies ago, this weirdo got hired to a completely different department, but was CC'd in most emails sent. He felt the need to repeatedly reply that my emails were too long, too detailed, and too wordy. I replied back to him with all the other directors CC'd that were also on the original email and told him that it was not his business to be reviewing my reports or giving me feedback. Fortunately, my operations director, who I directly reported to, replied in the same email reiterating the same thing. His stupid little ego got deflated, and he didn't bother me again. I work with Regina, who also sucks. My condolences. My very favorite sport is asking her to clarify her vague instructions, do it exactly as she asks, then print her emailed instructions and hand it to our big boss when she goes to raise hell about how it was done. It only took her about 8 times to learn that stuff wasn't going to fly. This witch keeps receipts. Then she accused me of throwing her under the bus. Nah, I'm not going to push you, but damn if I won't drag you under it with me. I'm a photographer, and I've been contracting for a school photo company for a few months at the start of each school year for a while now. This company sends out two photographers who work as a team switching off each day, one for group class photos and the other on portraits. A few weeks ago, I was out at a school with one of my colleagues who is a highly competent photographer and makes a ton as one of the country's most sought after wedding photographers. Point is, she knows her stuff. We had a ninth grade special ed class, the class for kids with ADHD and the ones who struggle in school because of home life, not the class of the developmentally disabled students. With two teachers who both had attitudes like photo day is a total inconvenience and not worthy of taking seriously, which sucks because it doesn't help the students enjoy it or cooperate. So my colleague was in group pictures and got their photo all set up, teachers rolling their eyes the whole time. Then when she started taking pictures, she said, "Say cheese," like she would with any other group. Different phrases, of course, in our language, but equivalent and as ubiquitous as cheese in the US. Well, the teachers, Martin and Helly, both immediately start chewing my colleague out for being patronizing and belittling, as they believe saying cheese is only for children. They felt insulted on behalf of their students even. My colleague was crushed and embarrassed to be yelled at in front of the students. She's all in her head like, I've been having wedding parties say cheese for years. Have I been offending people? Well, today I got sent out to the same school to take a staff photo. I get every teacher in the school set and take the first picture and yell, "Say cheese," which the majority did with gusto, including those two. Then I said, "Oh no, I'm sorry. I forgot. Martin and Helly don't like to say cheese. They're way too cool to say something so childish. Let's go with something more adult-like. Everyone say whiskey." So Martin and Helly aren't embarrassed. Those teachers get an array of looks from deeply annoyed with them to simply puzzled. Martin and Helly look properly ashamed. Then the whole group yells, "Whiskey!" So Martin and Helly aren't embarrassed. So, I taught at a private English language school. The students, many between 18 to 25 from all over the world, but about 40% Asian. Of that, a large percentage were Japanese and loved to take pictures and tell people to say cheese. Because of this, the students had immediately learned the American cheese. We went sightseeing in San Francisco as a school trip, and they called me to take a big group photo. I said, "Okay, everyone say sushi." The picture of everyone from all over the world laughing hysterically was used for the school's website, homepage, and brochures. After this day, this is what everyone said with glee at camera time. Because the school had rolling admissions, start or stop at any time, this tradition was continued for years. Thanks for the fun memory.